You just finished watching a video on how to subtract across zeros, and now we're going to practice some problems together. So I have this worksheet, and I'm going to skip through these problems for the across zero problems so that we can practice them. Okay? So as always, I start in my ones, 0 minus 7, and I cannot do that. So I go to my neighbor, but my neighbor cannot help me. So now what happens? He goes to his neighbor. So the 4 becomes a 3, and the 0 becomes a 10. This is just like how we've been regrouping right here. Okay, I'm going to grab a different color so this is easy for you to see. Okay, so now we go back to this 0. I still can't do this problem, but my neighbor can help me now. So I'm going to borrow from this 10. So my 10 becomes a 9, and my 0 becomes a 10. Now, if you rush through all of these problems and just go across the top and change these, it might work for you sometimes, but it's not always going to work for you because it's not always the case that you need to do this all the way across. Okay? So you want to make sure that you cannot do this problem in the ones column before you do all of this regrouping. Now let's subtract. 10 minus 7 is 3. 9 minus 1 is 8. And 3 minus 2 is 1. If I go backwards to check, 3 plus 7 is 10. 8 plus 1 is 9. And 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay, let's go down here to this problem. This only has 1 0, but it's not going to work for us because 9 minus 2, 9 is bigger than 2, so we don't even need to regroup. So this problem is not going to work for a good example. I'm going through and looking. This one also will not work because 5 is greater than 4, so no regrouping is necessary. I am not seeing very many good examples, so I'm going to write some out on my whiteboard. Here we go. Okay. So let's say that we have 300 minus 125. Okay? Now, 0 minus 5, I cannot do that. So I go to my neighbor. My neighbor cannot help me, so he goes to his neighbor. So I borrow from the hundreds, and my 3 becomes a 2. My 0 becomes a 10. Again, what we just did right here is the same as we have been doing. We're just adding on one more step, okay? So now that we have this 10, we're able to regroup with the ones to help them out, okay? So my 10 is going to become a 9 so that my ones now has 10. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 2 is 7. And 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay. Let's say we have 402 minus 35. You might say, oh, well, this doesn't have double zeros up here. It doesn't, but it still works as a good example. Watch. 2 minus 5, I cannot do it. 2 is smaller than 5. So I go to my neighbor for help. But notice my neighbor is a 0, so he cannot help me. So he has to go to his neighbor for help. So my 4 becomes a 3. My 0 becomes a 10. Okay? Now I can help out this ones place. So the ones place is going to borrow from the tens place. So my 10 becomes a 9. And my ones place is now 12. Okay? So it is not that much different than the regrouping you've already been doing. 12 minus 5 is 7. 9 minus 3 is 6. 3 minus nothing is 3. Okay, let's keep going. So I want you to practice subtracting across zeros. So let's try this one. 501 minus 98. Again, this is not double zeros, but, whoops, didn't mean to do that. But 1 minus 8 is something I cannot do because 1 is smaller than 8. And when I go to my neighbor, who is a 0, he cannot help me out because he doesn't have anything to give me. So he goes to his neighbor to get some help. So he borrows from the 5 and it becomes a 4. So now my tens place has 10 tens in it. Now the tens place is able to help out the ones place. So the 10 becomes a 9 so that this 1 can be 11. Okay? 11 minus 8 is 3, 9 minus 9 is 0, and 4 minus nothing is 4. Okay, do some more. I'm trying to move faster through the solving part so you can see as many examples as possible. Let's try 600 minus 245. Again, 0 minus 5, I cannot do it. So I go to my neighbor. He cannot help me because he's 0. So he goes to his neighbor. The 6 becomes a 5, so that the tens place will have 10 tens in it. Okay, now the tens place has something to help the ones place with. So this 10 becomes a 9, so that we can have 10 ones in the ones place. Okay, so 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 4 is 5. 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay. Now I want to show you this. This is what I'm talking about. If you were to rush through here and go ahead and change this to 6 and this to 9 and this to 10, you would be wrong. You can't just jump in and do that to your problems just because you see the top number has double zeros. Look at your problem. 0 minus 0. I can do that. I don't need to regroup or go to my neighbor. So it's just 0. 0 minus 6. Now that I cannot do. So just like with regular regrouping, you go to your neighbor. We're going to borrow from the hundreds. Now we have 10 tens. And we can do our problem. 10 minus 6 is 4. And 6 minus 3 is 3. So just because you see these two zeros here, do not jump to the conclusion that you need to just regroup all of this, and this is a 9, and this is a 10. Don't do that. Still work your problem one place value at a time. All right. Good luck.